Today's sermon is entitled Current Conditions in a Chaotic World. And today you could be forgiven for thinking not another sermon on end times, not another sermon on last day events. But what I would say to you today is that when we hear these sermons, we should allow those sermons to challenge us. They should challenge us to get ourselves ready. They should challenge us to get ourselves prepared, and they should challenge us to look at our lives and see where we are in relation not only to our relationship with Christ, but our relationship to what is going on in the world. So today, I want to look at 12 conditions. We usually call them signs. So 12 conditions in the world, and hopefully once we've looked at those, we will be able to speak to people, share with people in a meaningful way, in a relative way, because that's what we need to be doing in these last days. Our first scripture reading comes from Matthew chapter 24 and verse 1 to 4. And Jesus went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Jesus said unto them, See ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be? And what shall be the sign of thy coming and the end of the world? And Jesus answered and said unto them, Take heed that no man deceive you. The disciples gathered to speak to Christ, and I wonder whether they really knew what they were asking him. You know, when we look at the times of the disciples and of Christ, yes, they lived in perilous times with Jewish unrest, Roman occupation, the spies of the Sanhedrin on every corner. But the disciples had no idea what was to come upon this world. If Christ could have transported the disciples to this day, our day, I wonder what they would have made of it. I wonder if their hearts would have failed them for the sights they would have seen if they could see the world today. And the things that are happening now, even as we speak. And so, as we start to look at these conditions, we come to number 1, scoffers and mockers. And our text comes from 2 Peter chapter 3 and verses 3 to 4. Knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, Where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of creation. You know, the word scoffer means one who actively mocks and ridicules or scorns the beliefs of another. They choose to disbelieve God, and they make it their goal, they make it their priority to ridicule those who follow God. Friends, neighbors, and perhaps worst of all, family. We all have somebody or know somebody that kind of mocks what we believe to some degree or another. And I guess worst of all, it's worse for our family members who we love and we cherish when we try to share the gospel with them and they just don't want to know. And I would say really all we can do is pray for those people as they mock and scorn and ridicule us. But Psalm 1 gives us clear instruction about how to deal with these types of people. The Bible warns us not to entertain their company, or we risk having our own faith destroyed. Scripture tells that the scoffing will only increase as we near the end of time. And as we already see on TV and in the media, more and more celebrities are voicing their ungodly opinions on every platform that they can. Films and programs that not only obscure the true nature of God, but also obscure the true nature of Satan. Recently, we've had a TV series that is entitled Lucifer. And This particular series portrays Lucifer in so many ways, except his true nature and character. Here we see on the screen a write-up from a blog site describing who Lucifer is. Lucifer, morning star, has decided he's had enough of being the dutiful servant in hell and decides to spend some time on earth to better understand humanity. He settles in Los Angeles, the city of angels. And even right off the bat, we have some issues there that his last name is Morning Star and that he wants to better understand humanity. But here in the couple of pictures in our slide, we see that Lucifer has these great big white wings in this particular shot. And in the other, he's sitting on a white throne. You know, when we think about the color white and we think about especially a white throne, and we think of the book of Revelation, we can look at so many parts of scripture where we see the color white and what it represents. It represents purity and humility and righteousness. We think of a white stone that is given to the overcomer. We think of the white robes that are given to the overcomer. We think about the white horse returning in chapter 19 of Revelation, depicting Christ as this victorious king riding back. And we think of the great white throne judgment. But here these white wings and this white throne are afforded to Lucifer. There are so many deceptions in this series that no Christian should watch this. And to top it all off, he has a twin brother. And his twin brother's name is Michael. We see, this particular TV program, but there have been many in the past, many films and series that obscure the character of God and now the character of Lucifer. Our next condition is wars and rumours of wars. And our text comes from Matthew 24 and verses 6 to 7a. And it says, "And ye shall hear of wars and rumours of wars. See that ye not be troubled, for all these things must come to pass. But the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom." It's incredible to think that we have not had one genuine day, one genuine 24-hour period of peace since Cain killed Abel. Or should I say, Cain murdered Abel. And I say that because in this one defining act, it has shaped the way that humanity deals with conflict. When we think of conflict and we think of the term conflict resolution, on an individual scale, we understand that to be people coming to a table to discuss their differences and to find common ground and to come to some sort of amicable agreement. But in the world at large, when we think about conflict resolution, as we go past that point, then we get to war. As the conflict between Russia and the Ukraine continues, we hear about the tensions escalating between China and Australia and in that region, and also the US as well. On average, as we look back over the past few decades, there have been 30 wars every year, millions spent on war every hour, 80 times more spent on war than is required to provide water and sanitation to the world. And approximately 27,000 nuclear bombs in stock around the world. And whenever there is an explosion of conflict, especially in the Middle East, with Israel, many Christians run to their Bibles and begin to wonder, is this the end? Is this the end? But when we read verse 6, Jesus tells us that although there will be wars on a worldwide scale, don't be alarmed. Don't be afraid, because all of this must take place. But the end is not yet. In verse 7, the Greek word for nation is ethnos. So the text literally reads ethnicity against ethnicity, which explains that not only will there be wars on a worldwide scale, but there will be civil and racial tension as never before. In the last 3 years, we have seen this like never before. Ethnic tension is out of control. Groups and factions against each other at loggerheads. Different ethnicities fighting and arguing and in conflict against one another. Satan is literally trying to turn the human race against itself before it can be saved. Jesus tells us not to be afraid, because although Satan is trying to get God's creation to destroy itself, God will come before that ever happens. Jesus said that the conditions of this world would be a reliable indicator that the end is near and nearer than we think.